It started with a wine glass. Cabernet sloshed over the rim as Melissa slammed it on the marble countertop, her eyes glinting under the kitchen lights. We had fought before, married couples do. But this wasn't a fight. This was an execution. One where I didn't realize I was the one being sentenced. She stood on the other side of the kitchen island, her lips twisted in that contemptuous way that had become more and more common over the last year. Her blouse was still buttoned from work, but she'd undone the top 3, as if getting home was her excuse to uncoil, unwind, unhide. "You're emotionally boring," she said, the words slicing across the granite like glass. "I feel like I live with a corpse that pays the bills." I stared at her, not because I didn't understand, but because I did. Too well. This was something she'd been building toward. I could feel it, like static charge before lightning strikes. I didn't realize showing up every day, doing the hard things, the dependable things, that was boring to you now, I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't play the martyr, Jake. You're dependable. Congratulations. You're also passionless. Predictable. Sex is like checking off a grocery list with you." I flinched at that one. She knew exactly where to aim. Melissa always had a way of reading people just well enough to find where they were weakest, and then dig in when it suited her. I used to think it made her clever. Now it just made her cruel. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Not in anger. Just fatigue. "You wanted a house. I gave you a house. You wanted to wait until 35 before trying for a kid. I waited. You said you needed more space, more stability. I gave you that. You gave me a fucking routine, Jake," she snapped. "A perfect, sterile little routine. You brush your teeth the same way every night. You fold your socks like it's a religion. You never fight me. Never take charge. Do you even have a spine? Or are you just a flesh suit programmed to say, 'Whatever you want, honey'?" That hit harder than I expected. My mouth opened, then closed. I felt the words, but they didn't come. Something inside me was unraveling. Or maybe it was cracking. The version of me that had believed consistency was love, that loyalty was enough. That version was trying to process the reality in front of him. She wasn't done. "I need men who know how to take charge," she said, biting the word men, like it was something I'd forgotten how to be. "I need heat, Jake. I need to feel like I might get pinned to a wall once in a while. Like I might be fucked without asking." I felt that like a punch to the chest. Melissa used to tell me she loved how safe I made her feel. She used to trace her fingers over my chest at night and say she trusted me with everything. But now I was a disappointment. A habit. Background noise in her life that once made sense, but no longer inspired desire. And the worst part? I believed her. I left the kitchen without another word. My car keys felt cold in my palm, my hand trembling slightly as I locked the door behind me. The air outside was sharp with spring, but my skin felt numb. I drove with no destination. I didn't even know where I was headed until I found myself parked in the office garage downtown, the concrete dark and hollow around me. I sat in the car, engine off, just listening to the tick-tick-tick of cooling metal. I replayed her words. Emotionally boring. Passionless. I need men who know how to take charge. The irony was that I had always held back, always measured myself to keep the peace, to avoid being the kind of man who dominated, or demanded, or took. I believed that love was partnership, that restraint was strength, that putting her first meant something. But what if she'd never wanted peace? What if she'd wanted chaos, but the kind she could lose herself in? The kind of desire that didn't ask, it claimed? I felt something shift in my chest. Not rage, not grief, just silence. The part of me that had always tried to please her went quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to chase after her words, to apologize for not being enough. I just sat there, breathing, cold, awake. That's when I realized I didn't want to go home. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. The office was empty, shadows stretching across the open-plan floor like ink on paper. My desk was clean like always. I sat down and turned on my computer, more out of habit than anything. But I didn't check email. I just stared at the screen, thinking about the man she'd described. The man I wasn't. My fingers curled slightly on the edge of the desk. If she needed someone who knew how to take charge, maybe it was time I found out what that actually meant. Not for her. For me. And maybe, just maybe, I'd stop trying to be safe enough to keep her. Maybe I'd start being dangerous enough to keep myself. It was well past midnight when the elevator doors opened with a low chime, echoing through the lifeless halls of the 12th floor. My floor. Everyone had gone home hours ago. The office was a husk now. Empty chairs, dim monitors, shadows creeping along glass partitions. I didn't know why I was still there. Something about the silence felt right. Like the world had stopped long enough for me to catch up to myself. I was in my office, the only light coming from the city skyline bleeding through the window. My tie was off, shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up. I'd been staring at a single document on my screen for almost 30 minutes, not reading it, just letting it glow in front of me like some altar I couldn't bring myself to pray at. Melissa's words still lived in my head like squatters refusing to leave. Emotionally boring. Passionless. I need men who know how to take charge. I didn't hear the footsteps until they were almost at my door. Slow, deliberate. Heels. Then a shadow appeared in the frosted glass. Tall, poised, feminine. The door opened without a knock. Still here, came a voice like dark silk. Victoria Hale. My CEO. She stepped into the room like she owned it. Which, to be fair, she did. Even in the low light, her presence was impossible to ignore. She was a force of nature in a perfectly tailored black blazer, no blouse beneath it, just the bare suggestion of lace peeking at her collarbone. Her heels were sharp enough to kill a man, and her eyes, well, they didn't look at you. They looked through you. I had a feeling I'd find you here, she said, closing the door behind her. The click of the lock sounded louder than it should have. I sat up a little straighter. I didn't mean to stay this late. You didn't, she said simply. You needed to. I blinked. Excuse me. She walked to the corner of my desk and leaned against it, one leg crossing over the other. Her perfume was subtle but sharp, something citrusy with an edge. Her arms folded, and for a moment, she just looked at me, studied me. You have the look of a man who just had his entire identity kicked in. I exhaled through my nose. Something like that. Let me guess. Her voice softened, but it still had steel underneath. Wife told you you're not enough. That you're boring. That she wants something more. I met her gaze. It was uncomfortably accurate. Yeah. Victoria smiled. Not the kind of smile that comforts. The kind that knows. She's not wrong, she said. I flinched. My jaw tightened. But that doesn't mean she's right, either, she added, more softly now. You don't even know me, I said bitterly. You've barely said 10 words to me outside of quarterly meetings. That's because you've barely existed until now, she replied. Always so polite. So efficient. So small. A man like you has no business being small. I didn't know what to say to that. I hated how it made something stir in my chest. Victoria tilted her head slightly, her voice lowering. You're not here because you forgot to go home. You're here because home doesn't want you anymore. Or at least, it doesn't respect what you are. And what am I? I asked. She walked closer now, deliberately, her heels echoing off the glass and steel. You're a man who's finally ready to be rebuilt. The words hit something deep inside me. Something dormant. Her hand reached out, almost absent-mindedly, brushing a finger over the top button of my shirt. Not unbuttoning, just hovering. Testing. She looked at me the way a predator looks at something it's not sure will run or stay frozen. You've been taught to believe that control is dangerous. That power is unattractive. You buried your instinct to lead, to want, to take. And now the woman who asked for that quiet, safe version of you is spitting you out for not being the opposite. I swallowed hard. My heart was hammering in my chest, but not from fear. From something that felt suspiciously like excitement. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Victoria smiled again, but this time there was warmth beneath it. Dark, sharp, seductive warmth. Because I've been watching you, she said. And I only invest in people who are ready. I shook my head slightly. Invest in people. Her eyes gleamed. Don't worry. You'll understand soon. She turned then, walking toward the door, leaving a trail of heat in her wake. But just before she opened it, she glanced back over her shoulder. You should get some rest, Mr. Wallace. Tomorrow's going to be different. And just like that, she was gone. The door shut with a soft click, but the echo of her voice lingered in the room like perfume. I sat there, staring at the empty space she'd occupied, her words playing in my mind over and over again. You look like someone who's finally ready to be rebuilt. I didn't know what she meant. Not yet. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt something that wasn't numb. I felt alive. The next morning felt like the aftermath of a fever dream. I showered longer than usual, the water scalding hot, as if it could burn away the memory of her voice. You look like someone who's finally ready to be rebuilt. The words had haunted my sleep. Not in a bad way. More like an invitation I couldn't stop rereading. Even now, hours later, I could still smell her perfume. Or maybe I imagined it. Either way, something about Victoria Hale had carved itself into my brain. The elevator ride up to the 12th floor felt slower than usual. As if the universe wanted me to think harder about what was coming. My chest was tight, but not with dread. It was something else. The feeling of standing on a ledge and wanting to see what falling would feel like. The moment I stepped off the elevator, I noticed something strange. The office was alive, but hushed, as if the normal buzz of Monday had been dipped in static. Coworkers glanced my way, some curious, others unreadable. Maybe I was imagining it. Or maybe they sensed it too, that something about me had shifted. Sarah, my assistant, looked up from her desk as I passed. "Victoria wants to see you," she said quietly. She said, "It's urgent." I nodded. I didn't ask what it was about. Victoria's office sat at the far end of the floor, a glass fortress with blackout curtains pulled shut. That was new. Normally, she let the city shine in behind her like a throne of power. Today, it was sealed. Controlled. I knocked once. Her voice came immediately. "Come in." I stepped inside, and the moment I did, the door clicked behind me. Locked. Victoria sat behind her desk, legs crossed, a black silk blouse tucked into a pencil skirt that hugged her hips like a secret. Her heels rested on the edge of the desk, deliberate. She didn't move to greet me. She just looked. No smile. Just assessment. "I wanted to speak before the day got away from us," she said. I nodded, standing still, unsure whether to approach. "You remember what I said last night?" she asked. "Yes. And have you thought about it?" I swallowed. "I haven't stopped thinking about it." "Good," she said, finally rising from her chair. She walked toward me with slow, effortless grace, the click of her heels soft against the carpet. When she was close, too close, she reached out, her fingers brushing along my jawline, just beneath my chin. "Tell me something, Jake. If your wife said she wanted to sleep with other men, what would you do?" My pulse spiked. "I don't know." "Yes, you do," she whispered. "You'd let her. You'd say yes, wouldn't you?" I didn't answer. She saw the truth in my eyes anyway. "You'd let her. Because you've been trained to think your value comes from permission, from patience, from staying in line." Her fingers slid down my neck, resting just above my collarbone. "But what if you didn't have to ask permission anymore? What if you could rewrite the rules?" "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice low. "I'm saying," she said, stepping closer, "if your wife wants to sleep with other men, then you can too. But not as her equal. With me, you don't get to be equal." Her hand slid to my tie, adjusting it slowly, then tightening it, just slightly, with a little pull that made my throat catch. "You'll obey," she said softly. My breath stuttered. "Obey." She smiled now, not kindly, but approvingly. "I don't want another man in my bed," she said. "I want something else. I want to mold you. I want to see what happens when I peel back all those layers of politeness, restraint, guilt. I want to take you apart and build you into the man your wife never even imagined existed." Her hand moved to my chest, pressing gently. "But I won't pretend. This won't be about love. This won't be safe. And you'll be mine, Jake. Completely. When I want you, you'll come. When I say stop, you'll stop. You'll let me reshape you, and you'll thank me for the privilege." I should have pulled away, should have said no, but my body refused to move. She leaned in, her breath warm against my ear. "Do you want that?" My voice was hoarse. "Yes." She pulled back slightly, studying me for a beat, like she didn't quite believe I'd answered so quickly. "Good," she said, satisfied. "Then this is your first rule." Her hand dropped, and she circled back to her desk, picking up a plain white envelope. She held it out to me. Inside is a key card to a suite at the Lancaster Hotel. 7th floor. Tonight. 9 p.m. You'll knock once. You'll wait. You'll enter only when I tell you. I took the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. She smiled. Sharp, slow, and devastating. "If you're even 1 minute late, this ends." I nodded, heart thudding. "Say it," she said. "I'll be there," I said quietly. "No," she replied. "Say, yes, ma'am." I looked at her, caught in a heat I didn't know how to name. "Yes, ma'am." She turned her back to me then, returning to her chair without another word. And I left her office with a heartbeat that no longer felt like my own. The seventh floor of the Lancaster Hotel smelled like expensive silence. It was one of those boutique places built for power and discretion. Dim corridors, soft carpets, frosted sconces humming with golden light. The kind of place people came to when they didn't want to be seen, or when they wanted to be seen differently. I stood outside Suite 714. The keycard in my pocket was still untouched, exactly as she'd instructed. I wasn't supposed to use it. I was to knock. Once. And wait. It was 8:59 p.m. I hadn't worn cologne. I'd stared at the mirror at home for too long, wondering what I was supposed to be tonight. But in the end, I'd chosen the simplest thing I could. A clean white shirt, no tie, black slacks, and nerves that wouldn't quit. My wedding ring was still on. At exactly 9 o'clock, I knocked once. There was no answer for a full 10 seconds. Just silence and my pulse pounding in my throat like a drumbeat. Then the door opened. Victoria stood in the doorway barefoot, wearing a black silk robe that barely reached mid-thigh. Her legs were bare, her skin glowing in the low light behind her. The robe was cinched at the waist, but loosely, casual, deliberate. Her hair was swept up, a few strands falling against her cheek, framing a look that was both regal and feral. She didn't speak. She looked me over, head to toe, slowly. Not with desire, not yet, but with something heavier, assessment, like she was inspecting her new acquisition. Then she stepped aside. "Come in," she said. I obeyed. The room was all low lamps and velvet shadows. A chilled bottle of champagne sat unopened on the coffee table, but there was no music, no TV, just the hum of a world suspended. She closed the door behind me and didn't lock it. That surprised me. "You came," she said, walking past me into the suite. I followed her gaze as she moved to the center of the room and stopped. "Take off your shirt," she said. It wasn't a question. I hesitated, half a second too long. Her head tilted. "You're already failing." I swallowed and nodded, fingers moving to the buttons. One by one, I peeled the shirt off, folding it once and setting it on the armchair nearby. She watched, then stepped toward me, her fingers trailing lightly across my chest. "You're tense," she said. "I'm nervous." "Good." She circled me, slow and silent, like a lioness studying her prey. "When I touch you," she said from behind me, "you don't move unless I command it. You don't speak unless I ask. Your job is to feel. That's all. Understood?" I nodded. A sharp smack landed across my back, not hard, but shocking in its precision. "Use your words," she whispered near my ear. "Yes, ma'am." Good boy. The words shouldn't have done to me what they did. But something in me, the part I'd buried in years of quiet obedience, quiet resentment, responded. Not just physically, viscerally. She moved in front of me again, loosening her robe but not removing it. The silk slipped from one shoulder, revealing the black lace underneath, delicate, elegant, severe. "On your knees." I dropped. The carpet was plush beneath my knees, but I didn't notice it. My eyes were on her legs. She moved closer until I could smell her skin. Jasmine. Heat. Her fingers slid under my chin and tilted my face up to hers. No man kneels in front of me unless he wants to be broken. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She unfastened the belt on her robe slowly, deliberately, letting the silk part. The black lace beneath it clung to her curves like a secret. She watched me absorb her like hunger, then stepped back. "Stand," she said. I rose. She walked to the bed and sat down, legs crossed, fingers folded in her lap, like she was hosting a meeting. "Take off your pants," she said, voice calm as paper. I did. She watched me, expression unreadable. Her eyes lingered on the outline of me, the obvious arousal I wasn't even trying to hide. "No shame," she said. "That's your first lesson. Shame is the poison your wife used to neuter you." I didn't argue. She stood and came to me again, her hand wrapping gently, possessively, around me. "You don't ask for this. You don't earn it with flowers and date nights. You are taken, Jake. You are owned." I exhaled shakily as her grip tightened just enough to make my knees threaten to buckle. Then, with no warning, she let go. "Lie on the bed, arms at your sides." I obeyed. She climbed over me, still in lace and silk, straddling my hips but not letting us touch. Her fingers ran down my chest, nails tracing invisible lines of fire. "I don't do romance," she said. "What I offer is clarity, obedience, control. In return, you'll get something your wife never gave you." What's that? I whispered. She leaned in close, her lips a breath from mine. Freedom. Then she kissed me. Not gently. Not like a lover. Like a command. Her mouth owned mine, demanding everything, giving nothing. And then she began to use me. Every movement, every shift of her body, every sound. Deliberate, controlled, orchestrated. I wasn't making love. I wasn't even fucking. I was being claimed. When I reached for her hips instinctively, she slapped my wrist. No. I decide when you touch. Yes, ma'am. I breathed, drunk on the heat of her, on the dizzying submission. Time melted. When she finally allowed me to release, it was with her hand locked around my throat and her voice in my ear, whispering, now. It was the most powerful I'd ever felt. By the time she rose from the bed, I was shaking, spent, and silent. She didn't say good job. She didn't kiss me goodnight. She simply pulled her robe back on, walked to the door, and opened it. You may go, she said. I stood, slowly, finding my clothes in the silence. When I reached the door, I turned to look at her. She was smiling, faintly. You'll sleep better tonight, she said. All men do, after their first time obeying. Then she shut the door, and I stood in the hallway, heartbeat in my throat, knowing I'd never be the same again. I didn't sleep better that night. I slept harder. The kind of sleep that comes after surrender. After every wall you've spent years constructing has been cracked open, and the wreckage feels like release instead of ruin. Victoria didn't contact me the next day. Not through her assistant. Not through a text. Not even a glance in the office. She passed me in the hallway during a senior strategy meeting, her expression unreadable. Professional. Cold, even. But something subtle in her eyes said good boy, and it hit me harder than any praise I'd received in years. The silence was calculated. The waiting was part of the control, and I realized I wanted it. I craved the tension, the not knowing. It made every moment at work feel alive. 2 days later, she summoned me. A message from her assistant. Ms. Hale would like to meet in the sub-level conference room. 8:45 p.m. tonight. The sub-level conference room wasn't used often. It was windowless, quiet, private. I arrived on time. She was already waiting. Victoria wore a charcoal gray blouse, buttoned to the throat, and black trousers that clung to her like smoke. No lace tonight. No skin. But somehow, she was even more intimidating. On the table sat a sleek black folder. She didn't gesture for me to sit. I've decided to take you on, she said plainly. Take me on. As my project, she clarified, circling the table. You'll remain in your current role, but I'll be mentoring you directly. We'll meet weekly, both in and out of the office. I will be investing in your development. I blinked. Development for what? She smiled faintly. To become what you were supposed to be, before your wife clipped your wings. That stung more than I expected. You don't even know her. I don't need to, she said, stepping closer. You've been trained to apologize for existing. You suppress anger, desire, instinct. Everything that made you a man was neutered for her comfort. I didn't argue, because part of me agreed. From now on, when you're with me, you will follow. I speak. You listen. You obey. That includes work, personal development, and sex. My mouth went dry. Is this exclusive? No, she said with a small shake of her head. You belong to me. I am exclusive. You are available on my terms, when I choose. Until I say otherwise. The words were sharp, and yet, somehow it didn't feel like degradation. It felt like structure. Purpose. She handed me the folder. Inside were notes. About me. My leadership weaknesses. The way I defer in meetings. How I apologize for things that don't require apology. Even the way I carry myself. Shoulders forward, hesitant, unsure. You've been afraid to take up space, she said. We'll correct that. There was a second page. Rules. No checking my phone during time with her. No last-minute rescheduling. No initiating sex. Ever. No touching her without explicit permission. And always, always, yes, ma'am. You'll also keep a journal, she added. Daily. 1 page. About control. Desire. Frustration. The moments where you hold back. And why. I haven't written in a journal since college, I admitted. You stopped paying attention to yourself, she said, stepping into my space. That ends now. Her fingers smoothed my collar. You're not just my lover, Jake. You're my work. I should have felt used. Instead, I felt honored. The following weeks became a blur of duality. During the day, She was my CEO. Her demeanor remained professional, but focused. She started calling on me in meetings, pushing me to speak, cutting me off mid-sentence when I rambled. She corrected me publicly, but never cruelly. It was precise, effective, teaching. Privately, it was different. We met in hotel suites, sometimes in her car, once even in her private office after hours. Always locked doors. Always tension. Our encounters were fierce and controlled. No cuddling, no unnecessary words. One night, she had me strip and stand completely still as she circled me, correcting posture, grip, gaze. Every inch of my body was dissected, then claimed. She whispered instructions in my ear while her hand was between my legs. Don't move. Breathe slower. Tell me who you belong to. I whispered it. You. Say it like you believe it. You, ma'am. And when I came, only when she allowed it, I felt ownership. Hers over me, and mine, over myself. Over parts of me I'd ignored for years. The strangest thing was, my work improved. My voice in meetings grew sharper, more confident. My posture changed. People noticed. My team leaned in when I spoke. My department began hitting numbers we hadn't touched in months. Even my wardrobe shifted. Victoria began sending subtle messages. Get that tailored. That color doesn't suit the man you're becoming. Brown belts are for boys. I listened. I obeyed. And Melissa noticed too. She started texting more, asking when I'd be home. One night, she walked into the bedroom wearing lingerie she hadn't touched in years. Her eyes lingered on the way I stood, the way I looked at her. You've changed, she said. What happened to you? I didn't answer. I just kissed her, deeply, and pulled away before it went anywhere. I wanted her confused. Wanted her chasing what she'd discarded. She didn't know it yet, but I no longer belonged to her. My body, my voice, myself, were being reconstructed. Every part of me was being sharpened, strengthened, owned. By a woman who never asked me to change. She just commanded it. And I obeyed. The invitation came by courier. A sleek black envelope with no return address, hand-delivered to my office by a man in a dark suit who didn't say a word. Inside was a single card. Leadership Intensive Weekend. Location, disclosed upon departure. Attire, fitted. Minimal. Obedient. Departure, Friday, 5 p.m. Do not be late. V. No signature. No explanation. But I didn't need one. When Friday came, I told Melissa I was going on a corporate retreat. She barely looked up from her tablet. You? They never send you to those. Her tone was laced with surprise, but not concern. Well, enjoy your trust falls and PowerPoints. If she only knew. A black car waited for me outside the office. No driver name. No questions. Just a silent, air-conditioned ride into the hills north of the city. An hour later, the car turned onto a private road flanked by towering pines. At the end, a modern estate built from glass, steel, and stone nestled against the mountains like it had grown there. Victoria greeted me at the door. No staff, no assistants. Just her, barefoot, wearing a deep gray wrap dress that hinted at nothing but promised everything. Her hair was up, her lips were bare, and her presence swallowed the space whole. Welcome, she said. Take off your shoes. I obeyed. The first hour was silence. She didn't speak much, only gestured. A light meal. Water. A slow walk through the house. Then she opened a leather-bound binder and slid it across the table. Inside were photos of me. From work. From meetings. From the security feed in the parking lot. She pointed to one of me sitting with crossed arms, hunched slightly. Another where I was biting my lip while someone else spoke in a meeting. This, she said, tapping it, is a man who apologizes for breathing. Then she pointed to a third photo. A candid from just last week, where I was standing tall in front of a whiteboard, sleeves rolled, hands open mid-presentation. This, she said, is mine. My throat tightened. What is this weekend? I asked. Her eyes sparkled. Reconstruction. It began that night. She led me to a room that looked more like a designer dojo than a bedroom. Hardwood floors. Low lighting. A single padded mat in the center. No bed. No distractions. Strip, she said. Once I was bare, she handed me a black blindfold. Tonight, you learn how to feel without seeing. She made me kneel in the center of the room and whispered instructions from every direction, her voice moving, circling, drawing shapes in the air. Breathe through your mouth. Arch your back. Stop clenching. Then her touch. Fingertips across my chest, nails up my spine, a palm across my face. Not a slap, but a claim. She didn't allow me to touch her once. Everything was her rhythm, her voice, her body using mine for education, not romance. She gave me pleasure only when I stopped expecting it. And when I begged, she stopped entirely. This weekend isn't about sex, she said, crouched beside me while I panted on the mat. It's about rewiring. You don't chase reward. You chase obedience. I nodded. Yes, ma'am. Say it louder. Yes, ma'am. Saturday was harder. She made me carry a tray of crystal glasses across the stone patio barefoot while she watched from a lounge chair. Every time I spilled one, she made me start again. She asked questions at random. What do you want to be? What do you fear more, failure or irrelevance? When did you start hating yourself for being soft? And I answered, because I wanted to answer, not because I had to. That night, she invited me to dine with her at the long glass table facing the trees. Candles flickered. Wine was poured. She sat at the head. I sat on the floor beside her chair, and it felt right. Later, in the master suite, she stood in front of a full-length mirror and asked, "Why do you think your wife pulled away from you?" "I don't know," I said. She looked at me through the reflection. "Yes, you do." I swallowed. "Because I stopped leading. I stopped wanting." "No," she said. "You didn't stop wanting. You started hiding it. That's worse. Women don't crave niceness. They crave certainty. You were a ghost in your own life." She turned to face me. But not anymore. Then she kissed me, soft this time. It wasn't sex that night. She pulled me onto the bed and let me hold her. Let me feel her. Her hand stroked my hair, but her voice remained firm. "You're being broken open. Let it happen." I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. By Sunday, I wasn't the same man. She put me in front of the mirror in fitted slacks and a black button-down she'd had tailored for me overnight. She adjusted my collar, then stepped back and nodded. "This," she said, "is how power dresses." We stood side by side in the mirror. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "You're not mine yet," she said. "I want to be," I answered, without hesitation. She smiled, satisfied. "You will be. But first, you'll show the world who you are now. Starting tomorrow." Her fingers slipped a new key card into my hand. "Sweet. Friday. Same time. If you've done everything I expect this week, you'll earn your next lesson." She kissed my cheek, then whispered, "And if you don't, you won't see me again." And just like that, the CEO's weekend was over. But the version of me who arrived there, he never came back. I didn't plan on becoming a stranger in my own house. It just happened. After Victoria's weekend, something inside me had shifted so completely that even the air felt different on my skin. I moved with a steadiness I'd never had before. I spoke with a tone I didn't have to think about. I carried myself like someone who knew where he was going and why. And Melissa noticed immediately. For years, she'd been able to read me like a map she'd drawn herself. My moods, my rhythms, the quiet ways I tried to keep the peace. She'd used those tells, whether consciously or not, to keep me predictable, manageable, safe. But now she looked at me like someone had rearranged all the furniture in a house she thought she owned. The first night home, she came into the living room wearing an oversized sleep shirt that hung off one shoulder, one she used to wear when she wanted attention without having to ask for it. "You're home late," she said, pretending it didn't matter. "Had things to handle," I answered simply. I didn't explain. I didn't scramble to reassure. I didn't offer excuses she hadn't even asked for. And that, apparently, was the beginning of the end for her. She hovered near the couch like she was trying to figure out how to approach a man she thought she knew. "You didn't text." I didn't need to. She blinked, confused. That wasn't the script she was used to. "You're different," she said after a moment. I didn't respond. I kept reading the quarterly report in my hand, not because it was interesting, but because not giving her my full attention felt like reclaiming oxygen I'd been giving away for years. She sat beside me on the couch, too close, her thigh pressing against mine. "Are we okay?" "For now," I said. She flinched, swallowing hard. "What does that mean?" I turned a page. "It means what it means." For a moment, she didn't speak. And then something desperate flickered across her face, an emotion I hadn't seen from her in years, insecurity. 2 nights later, she tried something I didn't expect. I was in the bedroom, taking off my shirt after a late strategy session with Victoria, one where she'd leaned over my shoulder, her hand firm on the back of my neck, whispering corrections into my ear as if sculpting me into a sharper version of myself. I was still humming with that energy when Melissa stepped into the room. She wore lingerie. Not the cheap kind, not the playful kind either. This was the expensive set she'd bought 2 years ago, back when she thought we should try being more exciting. She'd worn it once. We'd had sex that night, but it was mechanical, distracted, almost sad. After that, she shoved the set to the back of the drawer like a failed experiment. Now she stood in front of me in it, hands trembling slightly at her sides. I was thinking, she said, voice softer now. We could reconnect. Her eyes searched mine, hungry in a way that wasn't seductive. It was fearful, as if she could sense something slipping beyond her control. I stepped toward her. Her breath caught. I brushed her cheek gently with my thumb. She leaned into the touch like a woman starving for affection she'd taken for granted. Then I whispered, Melissa, I don't belong to you anymore. The words left my mouth like truth incarnate. Her pupils dilated. The color drained from her face. She staggered back a half step as if I'd hit her. What? She breathed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I didn't soften the blow. I said no. Her shoulders shook. Her voice cracked. Are you seeing someone? Yes. A strangled sound came from her throat, part gasp, part sob. Who? She demanded, hysteria rising like a tide. Who is she? Is she? Does she? She couldn't even form the sentences. I didn't answer that part. I didn't need to. The uncertainty terrified her more than any answer could have. Tears filled her eyes. She pressed both hands to her mouth like she could physically hold in the collapse happening inside her. You can't do this to me, she whispered. But the thing was, I wasn't doing anything to her. She had pushed me away first. She had called me boring, passionless, inadequate. She had torn down the man I was, brick by brick, until someone else saw the potential in the rubble. Someone who wanted to build something stronger. Melissa reached for me, fingers curled into a fistful of my shirt like she could pull me back into the version of myself she preferred. Soft, apologetic, easy. I gently removed her hands. You didn't want me, I said. You wanted the idea of who I should be. She shook her head violently. I was wrong, Jake. I swear. Just tell me what you need me to do. The desperation in her voice was almost painful to hear, but not for the reasons she expected. She had never asked what I needed before. Not once. And now she was begging. But it was too late. You don't have to do anything, I said. I'm not yours to fix. She crumpled to the edge of the bed, sobbing into her hands, small, helpless sounds I never thought I would hear from her. Melissa, who always held the upper hand. Melissa, who always dictated terms. Melissa, who once called me boring. Now she was breaking, and I stood there watching, calm and steady, knowing exactly why. She sensed it. She sensed that someone else had claimed the parts of me she took for granted. And she knew, without me saying a word, that she had already lost. The promotion announcement hit the company email at 9 a.m. sharp. Effective immediately, Jake Wallace has been appointed to the position of Vice President of Strategic Development, reporting directly to the CEO. My name, in bold, at the top. No one said anything aloud at first, but I felt the ripple move through the office like electricity. Glances, raised eyebrows, slack jaws quickly masked by polite claps. I wasn't the obvious choice, and that was the point. Victoria Hale didn't promote the obvious. She promoted the rebuilt. The celebration was held in the top-floor atrium that afternoon. White wine, polished glass, clients and department heads and high-level staff mingled in designer suits. The energy was sharp, expectant, curious. Most of them had no idea what had changed about me, but they sensed it. Like animals in the wild sense a new alpha. I arrived exactly on time. Tailored suit, crisp collar, polished watch. Everything Victoria had told me to wear. Everything I would have considered too much 6 months ago. Now, I wore it like armor. And then she entered. Victoria Hale walked in like a storm in heels. Black blazer, sculpted waist, red lipstick that matched absolutely nothing and therefore demanded everything. She didn't move quickly. She didn't need to. The room opened for her. I saw Melissa before she saw me. She stood near the champagne table, wearing a navy sheath dress that hugged her just enough to say, I belong here. She looked beautiful. Intentionally so. I hadn't told her about the promotion party. Someone else had. Probably someone from HR she still kept in touch with from the company retreat days. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I let her drink me in. Her face changed slowly, like someone realizing they were looking at an old painting that had been secretly restored. Her head tilted, confused. This isn't the man I left in our kitchen 2 months ago. And she was right. Victoria made her way toward me, not smiling, but acknowledging. A subtle nod. A hand placed gently on the small of my back. Just enough for those paying attention to notice. Melissa noticed. I felt her eyes freeze the moment Victoria's hand made contact. Victoria leaned in slightly, not touching me anymore, but commanding space. You clean up well, she murmured. Learn from the best, I said. I could feel people watching us, subtly, pretending not to. That only made it more thrilling. We weren't doing anything inappropriate. Nothing sexual. Just proximity. Intention. Power. Come with me, she said quietly. I followed her through the crowd. She didn't look back to see if I obeyed. She didn't need to. We stopped by the balcony doors. She turned toward me, brushing imaginary lint from my lapel with her fingers. You're being observed, she said. I know. Good. Let them look. Then, with just enough volume for me to hear, she added, Tonight, you'll present yourself. 8 sharp, polished, prepared, and silent. My heart jumped. Yes, ma'am. She stepped back and re-entered the crowd, leaving me with the aftershock of her presence. It was then that Melissa approached. Her heels clicked a little faster than usual, like she was chasing something before it vanished. What the hell was that? She asked. I sipped my wine. That was my promotion. She narrowed her eyes. No, that. She gestured toward Victoria's retreating figure. Was something else. Was it? I asked calmly. You're different, she said, her voice edged with a quiet panic. Everyone can see it. And her, what is she to you? I held her gaze. She's someone who saw what you never did. Her eyes welled, just slightly. You're not serious. I didn't answer. You're cheating, she hissed, trying to sound angry. But she wasn't angry. She was afraid. For once, I said, I'm not answering to you. People around us weren't listening. But they were close enough. And that made it worse for her. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was ambient. She was watching a man she'd controlled, dismissed, become someone she no longer recognized. Someone who no longer asked. I stepped past her, heading toward a group of directors, not offering a goodbye. Just a hand on her shoulder, light and final. She didn't follow. She stood alone near the champagne, blinking too fast, mouth slightly open. Not in anger. In disbelief. She had wanted a man who took control. Now she was watching him be led by a woman who commanded it. And she understood. Not just that she'd lost me, but that I'd never belonged to her in the first place. Melissa waited until midnight to confront me. She didn't say a word during the ride home after the promotion celebration. Just sat beside me in the car, arms folded, jaw clenched, eyes fixed out the window like the city lights might offer her answers I wasn't giving. I could feel her unraveling beside me. By the time we walked into the house, she didn't bother with pleasantries. She turned on the living room lights, kicked off her heels, and spun to face me before I even took off my jacket. What is going on between you and her? Her voice was trembling, not loud, but sharp enough to cut. I set the jacket down over the back of a chair. You're going to need to be more specific. Don't play dumb, she snapped. Victoria, your boss. That woman. That predator. Who had her hand on your back like she owns you. She doesn't have her hand on my back, I said calmly. She has it on my spine. There's a difference. Melissa blinked like she didn't understand. She didn't. She's using you, Jake. Don't you see that? I stepped forward, just slightly. No, Melissa. She sees me. You never did. That stopped her. You're having an affair, she said, quieter now. Say it. Just admit it. I didn't move. You said you wanted freedom. You said you needed excitement. You told me, your words, that I was emotionally boring. Passionless. She looked away, her lips trembling. I let you have your space, I continued. I gave you time. I gave you the benefit of the doubt when you came home smelling like another man's cologne and said it was from a hug. I let you pull away because I thought I wasn't enough. And now what? She asked, her voice rising. Now you're punishing me? I shook my head. No, I'm reclaiming me. The silence that followed was long. Heavy. Melissa's posture shifted. She was searching for something, leverage, control, understanding. None of it was working. She's just better, isn't she? She said finally, voice cracking. I let that hang in the air. She's more powerful, more successful. She gets in your head. She makes you feel like a man. And suddenly, I'm the villain for not worshiping you when you were dead behind the eyes for years? That stung. Because it was true, in part. But not in the way she meant. I wasn't dead, I said. I was buried. I took another step toward her. And you didn't try to dig me out. You just threw dirt on top. She started to cry then, silently at first. No sobbing. Just tears streaking down cheeks that had once looked at me like I was something reliable. Convenient. Easy. I used to feel guilty when she cried. Now I felt clear. You want to know what's going on between me and Victoria? I asked. She looked up. She taught me how to stand. How to speak without apologizing. How to take up space without shrinking. She took what you broke and rebuilt it. And no, it's not just about sex. It's not about revenge. It's about being seen, completely, and not being made to feel ashamed for wanting more. She doesn't love you, Melissa whispered. She doesn't have to, I said. That hit her harder than anything else I'd said. Her knees nearly gave out. She sat on the arm of the couch, like she couldn't hold herself up anymore. You're leaving me, she said. I didn't answer. Jake, please. I didn't know. I didn't mean what I said that night. You are passionate. You're everything. I pushed because I was afraid. I wanted more, and I thought you couldn't give it to me, and I was wrong. You were, I said. But not just because you didn't see what I could be. You didn't want to. Melissa stood again, walked to me, and placed her hands on my chest. She looked up at me with wet eyes. Tell me it's not too late. I didn't touch her. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said the one thing I knew with absolute certainty. It's not me you're crying for. It's the version of me you thought you controlled. Her hands dropped. She didn't beg again. She just turned and walked slowly to the hallway, shoulders hunched, defeated. A silhouette of the woman who once wielded her words like weapons, now speechless in the face of the man those words created. And me? I stood there in the quiet, not triumphant, not angry, just resolved. Melissa had opened the door to something she didn't understand. She wanted danger, power, passion. Now she saw what it looked like when a man truly claimed it. And it didn't beg to stay. Melissa tried everything after that night. Breakfasts left untouched on the counter. Soft smiles, too rehearsed to be genuine. A bottle of my favorite bourbon, one I hadn't touched in months, appeared on the kitchen shelf like a peace offering. The curve of her hips in familiar leggings. The scent of her perfume, worn just a little too obviously. She was chasing shadows. Specifically, the ghost of a man I no longer was. I wasn't cruel. I didn't punish her with silence or hostility. I still said good morning. I still asked if she needed anything when I made coffee. But everything about my tone was measured. Unemotional. Clear. Indifferent. That was what broke her the most. Indifference. When she snapped at me one morning because I forgot to close the cabinet door, I didn't argue. I didn't apologize. I simply looked at her and said, "You're not angry at the cabinet." She flinched. That night, she sat beside me on the couch, fingers gripping a throw pillow like it might anchor her to whatever part of me she thought still existed beneath the surface. "I miss you," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. She turned toward me, her voice trembling. Can we just reset? Please? I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. Just tell me what you need me to do." She was pleading now, but I wasn't a man searching for permission anymore. I was a man who had found ownership. Of my body, of my time, of my mind. "I don't need anything from you," I said. She stared at me. "So that's it?" "No," I said, rising to stand. "This is the beginning." 2 nights later, she tried again. I came home late from work. Victoria had asked me to stay for a closed-door presentation rehearsal. We'd gone over it 3 times, refining every detail. When I'd nailed it on the 4th run, she walked behind me, placed her hand at the base of my neck, and said, "That's my man." Those words echoed in my head as I stepped into the house. Melissa was waiting in the living room, again in lingerie. But this time, it wasn't seductive. It was sad, wrinkled, forced. Her arms were crossed over her chest, but her eyes were wide, glassy. "I just want to feel close to you again," she said. "I know," I replied. "Then why won't you let me?" I walked past her toward the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I took a sip, then another. I didn't rush the silence. I let it fill the room like smoke. You want the version of me that asked permission? I said finally. She walked over, grabbing my hand. No, I want the version of you that loved me. I looked down at our hands, hers trembling, mine steady. That version of me loved you quietly, I said. He tiptoed around your moods. Apologized when you grew cold. He folded himself up to fit inside the space you gave him. And what about this version? She asked, voice shaking. The one you are now. He doesn't fold. She collapsed into me then, arms wrapped around my torso, tears soaking into my shirt. I'll do anything, she sobbed. I'll be who you need. Just stop pulling away. I closed my eyes. Victoria's voice echoed in my mind from a night not long ago. She wants to tether you with guilt. That's all she has left. I placed my hands gently on Melissa's arms and stepped back. I'm not angry at you anymore, I said. I'm just done trying to become small enough to be what you think you want. Her face twisted. So she wins. This was never a game, I said. But yes, if you need to see it that way, then yes. She wins. Because she saw in me what you didn't. You're under her spell, she snapped. She's brainwashed you. I shook my head. No. She woke me up. Melissa turned away, wiping her tears roughly, pacing like a woman unraveling from the inside out. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I thought I was challenging you, making you stronger. I thought if I pushed, you'd rise. I gave her a sad smile. You didn't want me to rise. You wanted me to stay in place and call it love. The silence stretched, longer this time. She sat down on the couch, her hands in her lap like they didn't know what to do anymore. Is she in love with you? She asked. No. Do you love her? I belong to her, I said. And that's more than love. Melissa's eyes brimmed again. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. You're really going, she whispered. I already left, I replied. You just didn't notice until now. She buried her face in her hands. And I turned and walked upstairs. Not because I hated her, but because there was nothing left to fix. Victoria didn't tell me what to bring. The message was simple. A calendar invite, marked private, with only one word in the subject line. Review. No time for questions. No room for hesitation. Just one location, her penthouse, and a start time, 9 p.m. I arrived at 8:58. The city shimmered behind her floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed in gold and navy, as if the night itself bent for her. I stepped out of the private elevator into a space that looked less like a home and more like the setting for a final act. There she was, standing at the far end of the room in a deep emerald silk gown, barefoot, holding a crystal glass of something amber. She didn't greet me. She didn't smile. She just stared, letting her eyes move over me with the slow intensity of someone reviewing a document she had rewritten word by word. Close the door, she said. I did. Take off your jacket. I slipped it from my shoulders and hung it on the polished coat rack by the wall. Come here. Her voice wasn't loud. It never needed to be. I crossed the marble floor toward her. My footsteps echoed faintly, but not as loudly as my heartbeat. The last few months had sharpened me, changed me, but tonight still felt like an exam I didn't want to fail. When I reached her, she didn't say anything right away. She simply circled me once. Slowly. Posture, she said. I straightened my back, rolled my shoulders slightly. Voice. Even. Calm. Good, she murmured. Then, finally, she looked into my eyes. You've exceeded every expectation. I felt something deep in my chest unlock. Thank you, ma'am. But this was never just about performance, she continued, walking past me, setting her drink down. This was about alignment. About becoming. About who you serve and why. I followed her silently into the living room. The lights were dimmed low, casting long shadows across the modern furniture. There was no one else here. No distractions. No escape. On the coffee table sat a single envelope. She gestured for me to sit. I did. She remained standing, hands clasped behind her back like she was conducting a symphony. This envelope contains your divorce papers, she said. Signed by your attorney. All that's left is your signature. I stared at it. Not out of hesitation, but out of awe. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't pain. This was release. Everything that had once felt like failure, like loss, had become a threshold. A passage. You may sign when ready, she said. I opened the envelope. Inside was the familiar stack of papers, cleanly organized, tabs in place. I picked up the pen and signed where I needed to, each stroke smoother than the last. I felt no grief, Only clarity. When I was done, I looked up at her. I'm yours, I said. She smiled faintly. You always were. You just didn't know it yet. She crossed to me slowly and sat down beside me. Her hand rested lightly on my thigh, not claiming, not coaxing, just present. You understand what this means now, don't you? She said. I think I do. Say it. That I wasn't made to be passive, or quiet, or small. That I was meant to serve someone who saw my potential and demanded more. Her fingers traced the inside of my wrist. And do you regret any of it? No, I said, not even leaving her. I thought for a moment, then shook my head. She wanted someone she could control. You wanted someone you could elevate. And now? I turned to face her. Now I choose elevation. Her eyes lit with satisfaction. She leaned in, not to kiss me, but to rest her forehead against mine. You've passed, she whispered. Every test, every obedience, every transformation. You're mine. Fully. I nodded, and I felt it. Deep down. Owned. Seen. Rebuilt. Victoria stood and extended her hand. I took it. She led me to the glass wall overlooking the city. We stood side by side in the reflection, no longer boss and employee. Not lovers in the traditional sense. Something more intricate. More deliberate. What happens now? I asked. She smiled. Now we make you useful. Later, as I left the building, divorce papers in hand, mind spinning but grounded, I saw Melissa for the last time. She was parked outside, waiting, her face pale, her eyes rimmed red. I walked up to the passenger window. She rolled it down. I knew it would be tonight, she said. I said nothing. She took everything, didn't she? I shook my head. No, I replied. You gave everything away. She just knew what to do with what you left behind. Her jaw trembled. I never meant to. You did, I said. You just didn't think I'd grow out of the version you built. She swallowed hard. You were mine. I looked over my shoulder at the entrance to Victoria's tower, then back at Melissa. No, I said gently. I never was. I walked away without waiting for a goodbye. The city was colder than it had been a few hours earlier, but I felt nothing but warmth. I wasn't leaving something behind. I was walking towards someone who had claimed me in every way Melissa never could, and I knew, without doubt, that I was finally home.